Stress has always been treated as a modern villain. But the truth is deeper. It was born as one of the most powerful biological weapons humans have ever had. It is ancient, strategic, precise. A true superpower, sculpted by evolution to keep us alive in the face of real threats. But what once saved lives is now shortening those of millions of people. And the worst part, silently. To understand why stress has become so dangerous, we need to go back to the beginning. Every organism seeks balance. This state, called homeostasis, is what allows your body to function harmoniously. To maintain this balance, the body adjusts temperature, manages energy, regulates hormones, and modulates immunity. But nature has never been kind, and so, an emergency mechanism capable of pulling the body out of its comfort zone in fractions of a second emerged. Acute stress. Imagine a scene 50,000 years ago. A small tribe warming itself around a fire when, out of nowhere, a threat emerges in the darkness. A hungry predator approaches. In a fraction of a second, the human brain recognizes the danger and triggers the highest alert. Everything changes. The heart accelerates. The lungs expand respiration. The body releases adrenaline like a jet of energy. Pain disappears. Focus becomes absolute. Speed increases. It's as if the body transforms into another creature, capable of temporarily surpassing its own limits. This emergency mode works like a metabolic switch. It puts all priority on surviving now, whatever the cost. In life or death situations, this makes perfect sense. You need to run, fight, react, defend yourself. When the threat passes, the body shuts down this state and returns to balance, allowing physical and emotional recovery. This mechanism worked extremely well for almost all of human existence. But the world changed so quickly that biology couldn't keep up. Today, the predator that activates your stress response no longer has teeth. It has a sender. It arrives through a notification, a negative comment, an urgent message, or an endless stack of tasks. The body, however, doesn't know how to differentiate a real attack from an aggressive email. It interprets both as threats. And because of that, it triggers the same dramatic response, even when there is nothing physical to fight or flee from. Thus emerges modern stress. Frequent, repetitive, prolonged, and invisible. Microstressors are the most treacherous part of the problem. They aren't major traumatic events that knock people down. They are small daily needles. The notification that interrupts your focus, the deadline that tightens, financial insecurity, constant comparison on social media, the feeling of never keeping up with your own life. Each small, isolated stressor seems harmless, but together, they add up into a destructive cycle. Meanwhile, bigger problems continue to accumulate. Adult life uncertainties, growing responsibilities, professional pressures, economic difficulties, strained relationships. The brain, unable to filter what deserves a reaction, triggers the alarm repeatedly. The body enters survival mode without ever returning to rest. Acute stress is powerful. Chronic stress is devastating. The reason is simple. It was designed to last minutes, not days, weeks, or months. When it becomes continuous, the same biology that once saved our ancestors begins to sabotage us. Organs become overactive. Hormones become dysregulated. Metabolism becomes confused. Immunity stalls. The brain loses efficiency. And the entire body starts functioning like an overheated machine that is never turned off. Many people don't realize it, but they live inside this state almost all the time. They believe they are just tired, just restless, just worried. But the body is sending clear signals that it is operating in permanent emergency. And this continuous state takes a heavy toll. Low energy, irritability, memory lapses, digestive difficulties, muscle pain, loss of focus, rising anxiety. Gradually, stress stops being a reaction to an event and becomes an environment, a constant background that shapes decisions, thoughts, habits, and emotions. And when that happens, the person becomes a limited version of themselves, not because of lack of willpower, but because the brain is adapted to survive, not to thrive. Acute stress was a brilliant solution of evolution. Chronic stress is the most dangerous flaw of the modern world. And understanding this difference is the first step toward regaining control over your body and over your life. When stress stops being a short impulse and becomes a permanent state, something deep begins to happen inside the body. That emergency mechanism, designed to save lives, becomes a corrosive force that acts in silence, day after day, undermining every layer of physical and mental health. What was meant to be a momentary burst of energy turns into a kind of continuous leak, consuming reserves, wearing down organs, and sabotaging essential processes. The first impact happens at the interface between the body and the brain. When stress does not turn off, the nervous system remains in maximum activation. This decreases the ability to think clearly, reduces the sense of perspective, and increases impulsivity. The brain begins to see threats where they do not exist and responds to trivial setbacks as if they were real emergencies. For many people, this manifests as irritability, emotional outbursts, persistent anxiety, and increasing difficulty in solving problems. From this point on, the entire organism begins to operate with distorted priorities. Digestion, which requires calm and directed energy, is placed in the background. The intestines become more sensitive, alternating periods of sluggishness with episodes of discomfort and urgency. Sleep, another fundamental pillar of balance, becomes compromised. The person falls asleep tired, but wakes up exhausted, as if their body had worked all night. And in a way, it really did. In parallel, metabolic regulation suffers a severe impact. The production of cortisol, which should be occasional, becomes constant. And this excess changes the way the body processes fat, glucose, and energy. The organism begins to store more abdominal fat, decreases sensitivity to insulin, and enters a metabolic state that resembles the early stages of chronic diseases. This is why prolonged stress is associated with weight gain, difficulty losing weight, food cravings, and changes in appetite. The cardiovascular system also pays a high price. The heart, repeatedly stimulated, works faster and harder than it should. The blood vessels, exposed to continuous stress, lose flexibility, accumulate microlesions, and become fertile ground for the formation of fatty plaques. Over time, this paves the way for hypertension, arrhythmias, increased risk of heart attack, and strokes. Immunity, in turn, enters a paradoxical dynamic. Part of the immune system becomes suppressed, making the body more vulnerable to viruses, bacteria, and even the development of autoimmune diseases. At the same time, another part becomes hyperactivated, causing internal inflammation in multiple tissues. This imbalance explains why people under prolonged stress get sick more easily, have recurring infections, show heightened allergies, and experience chronic pain with no apparent cause. The impact is not limited to the physical. Emotional quality also deteriorates. With the brain trapped in survival mode, feelings of hopelessness, lack of motivation, and mental exhaustion begin to emerge. Memory deteriorates. The ability to make decisions decreases. The mind loses agility. Emotions become more volatile. It is not uncommon for uncontrolled stress to slowly lead to generalized anxiety, depression, or burnout syndrome. This cycle creates a painful paradox. The more stressed a person is, the less able they are to escape the state that is making them sick. They lose clarity to reorganize their routine, lose energy to implement changes, lose confidence to seek help, and, without realizing it, sink more deeply into the spiral of chronic stress. But despite the seriousness of this picture, there is a crucial message. This process is reversible. The human body, even when worn down, retains an impressive capacity for recovery. If the internal environment changes, the organism responds. If stress decreases, the systems begin to reorganize. And every small intervention can generate a positive chain reaction. The first turning point happens when the nervous system can alternate again between tension and rest. This does not require major transformations. It requires interruptions, planned moments of slowing down, pauses that break the continuous cycle of hyperactivation. Light walks, deep breathing, meaningful conversations, contact with nature, simple daily rituals that teach the body to reorganize its physiology. The second turning point arises when the main stressor is identified and, when possible, removed. Sometimes this means adjusting the use of social media, limiting exposure to content that triggers anxiety, reorganizing the work environment, or establishing clear boundaries with people who drain your energy. Other times, the necessary change is greater. Changing jobs, changing environments, seeking professional help. These are not easy decisions, but they tend to be transformational when applied consciously. There is also a third pillar, strengthening the systems that stress weakens. This involves regular and quality sleep, eating fewer processed foods and more real nutrients, adequate hydration, light and consistent movement, sunlight exposure, relaxation routines, and presence practices. Each of these factors reduces the physiological load of stress and gives the body the ability to function in balance again. And above all, there is an essential point. No one overcomes chronic stress with willpower alone. The brain trapped in survival mode does not think clearly enough to solve everything on its own. This is why asking for help, whether from friends, family, or professionals, is not a sign of weakness, but an intelligent biological strategy. Stress was shaped to save us, not to destroy us. It is not the enemy. The problem is living trapped in it. When you learn to use stress as a tool, not as a destiny, the body regains strength, the mind regains focus, and life regains direction. And the transformation almost always begins with a single step: recognizing that you deserve to feel well. Do not let this knowledge stop here. Subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share this video right now. You may be exactly the reason someone else escapes the cycle of chronic stress.